The stranger who paid for my groceries changed my life forever. The gun was already in his hand when I saw him. That's the thing about grocery stores in small-town America. They're supposed to be safe. The fluorescent lights hum overhead like a lullaby. The automatic doors slide open with that familiar ding, and you forget that danger can walk right in behind you. Wearing a faded denim jacket and a baseball cap pulled low over eyes the color of winter sky. I was standing in aisle 7, the one with the canned vegetables and the cheap pasta, my cart half empty because half empty was all I could afford. My phone had buzzed 20 minutes earlier with a text from my landlord. Rent due Friday, Jenna. No extensions this time. I'd stared at those words until they blurred, then shoved the phone into my pocket and kept pushing my cart, because what else was there to do? That's when I saw him, not the man with the gun. That came later. No, first I saw the stranger. He was leaning against the end cap display of discount cereal, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Dark hair streaked with premature gray at the temples. A scar ran through his left eyebrow, thin and silver, like a crack in porcelain. He wasn't handsome, not in the movie star way, but there was something about him that made you look twice. Something tired and warm at the same time, like a fireplace after the flames have died down to embers. I looked away. In my experience, men who stared at women in grocery stores usually wanted something: your number, your attention, your fear. I'd given enough of all three in my 26 years to last a lifetime. But he didn't approach me, didn't say a word, just watched as I counted out my items, putting back the name-brand coffee for the generic stuff. The fresh chicken for the frozen patties that tasted like cardboard but cost half as much. I was doing the math in my head, the same math I did every week. If I skipped breakfast, if I walked to work instead of taking the bus, if I pretended not to see the check engine light that had been glowing on my dashboard for 3 months, maybe, I could make it to payday without my account dipping into the red. I didn't see him follow me to the checkout line. But when the cashier rang up my total and I swiped my debit card, the machine made that awful sound. The declined sound. The sound that means you're not just broke, you're exposed. He was right there. "Try it again," the cashier said, a teenage girl with braces and pity in her eyes. I swiped again. Same sound. "Maybe the chip?" she suggested. I inserted the card. The machine whirred, then declined. My face burned. The line behind me shifted, restless. I could feel their eyes on my back, could hear the whispered judgments. Get a job. Manage your money. Stop buying things you can't afford. Never mind that I worked 50 hours a week at the diner on Main Street. Never mind that my mother's medical bills had swallowed my savings whole 2 years ago. Never mind that I hadn't bought a single thing for myself in 6 months. "I'm sorry," I whispered, reaching for the items I could live without. The eggs, the milk. I'll cover it." The voice came from behind me, low and rough, like gravel under tires. I turned, and there he was, the stranger from aisle 7, already pulling a worn leather wallet from his back pocket. "No," I said too loud. "No, I can't." "You can." He handed the cashier a $100 bill, crisp and new, the kind that looked like it had come straight from an ATM. "Keep the change." The girl's eyes went wide. "Sir, your total is only $47. "I know what it is." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in those winter sky eyes that I couldn't name. Grief, maybe, or recognition. "Bag it up, please." I should have argued, should have shoved the money back at him and walked out with my head held high, even if it meant going hungry for 3 days. Pride was all I had left, and I guarded it like a junkyard dog. But I was so tired, so bone-deep, soul-heavy, tired. And the smell of the rotisserie chicken I'd put in my cart, the one I'd planned to eat for dinner, for lunch, for breakfast if I had to, smelled like hope. "Thank you," I whispered, the words tasting like ash and honey. He nodded once, then turned and walked out of the store, the automatic doors sliding shut behind him with that familiar ding. I didn't see him again for 3 weeks. I looked for him. I'll admit that. Every time the door chimed at the diner, every time I walked past the park on Elm Street where the homeless guys played chess, every time I stopped at the gas station on Route 9, I told myself I just wanted to pay him back, that I'd save up the $47 and hand it to him with interest, with dignity, with a speech about how I didn't need charity. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than that. He'd looked at me like he knew me. Not the me who smiled at customers and said, "Have a nice day," 50 times a shift. The real me. The one who cried in the shower so no one would hear, who kept her mother's urn on the nightstand because she couldn't afford a burial plot, who woke up at 3 a.m. with her heart hammering and no idea why. I wanted to know what he saw, and I was afraid to find out. Then, on a Thursday in late October, the leaves turning gold and red along the streets of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, he walked into the diner. I was refilling coffee for table 4 when the bell above the door rang. I looked up and there he was. Same denim jacket, same baseball cap, same scar slicing through his eyebrow. He took a booth by the window, the one that looked out at the parking lot and the mountains beyond, and he waited. My hands shook as I poured his coffee. Black, no sugar, I noticed. The way my father used to drink it, before the drinking took him. "You didn't have to come here," I said, setting the mug down harder than I meant to. Coffee sloshed over the rim, dark and hot on the white formica. "I know." He wrapped his hands around the mug, and I saw the calluses, the nicks and scars of manual labor. "But I wanted to see if you were okay." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the mountains. When he spoke, his voice was different. Softer, sadder. "Because 3 years ago, someone did the same thing for me, at a truck stop outside Tulsa. I was down to my last $2, hadn't eaten in 2 days, and this old woman, must have been 80, skin like paper. She paid for my breakfast, didn't say a word, just smiled and walked away. I slid into the booth across from him, rules be damned. And I spent the next year trying to find her, to pay her back." He finally looked at me, and I saw the grief I'd glimpsed in the grocery store, raw and unguarded. She'd died 2 months after I saw her. Heart attack, they said. Never got to thank her. Never got to tell her that her $47 didn't just buy me a meal, it bought me another day, another week. Long enough to get a job, an apartment, a reason to keep going. His name was Daniel Reeves. He was 41 years old, born and raised in a town called Broken Bow, Oklahoma, though he'd left at 19 and never looked back. He'd been a carpenter, a soldier, a long-haul trucker. He'd been married once, to a woman named Sarah who died of ovarian cancer when they were both 29. He'd been sober for 6 years, though he didn't say from what, and I didn't ask. He came to the diner every Thursday after that. Always the same booth, always black coffee, always a $20 tip that I tried to refuse and he always left anyway. We talked about everything and nothing. The weather in Millbrook, which was unpredictable and moody, like a teenager. The best pie in the county, Mrs. Gunderson's peach, though Daniel swore by the apple at the county fair. My mother, Margaret, who'd raised me alone in a trailer on the outskirts of town, who'd worked 2 jobs until her body gave out, who'd believed in kindness the way other people believe in God. She used to say, I told him one night, the diner empty except for us and the fry cook in the back. That every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, so be kind. Always be kind. Daniel smiled, and it transformed his face. Not handsome, no, but beautiful in the way old buildings are beautiful, all character and history. Smart woman, she was. I wiped at my eyes, annoyed at the tears that came without permission. She was the best person I ever knew, and I couldn't save her. You don't save people, Jenna. He reached across the table, his calloused hand covering mine. You just walk beside them for a while. That's all any of us can do. The thing about walking beside someone is that eventually you start to lean on each other. By December, Daniel was picking me up after my shifts, walking me home through the snow-dusted streets of Millbrook. By January, he was fixing the leak in my bathroom sink, the one the landlord had ignored for 6 months. By February, he was sitting on my couch on his days off, reading while I napped, cooking dinner while I showered, being there in the quiet spaces where loneliness used to live. I learned that he talked in his sleep sometimes, mumbled names I didn't recognize. I learned that he hated mushrooms but loved onions, that he could quote every line from The Shawshank Redemption, that he kept a photograph of Sarah in his wallet, faded and soft at the edges from being touched too many times. Do you still love her? I asked him one night, the snow falling outside my window like a curtain drawn across the world. Always, he said, and I loved him for his honesty. But love isn't a finite thing, Jenna. Loving her doesn't mean I can't love you. He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that it took me a moment to realize what he'd confessed. When I did, I kissed him. My first kiss in 3 years, since before my mother got sick. Since before I built my wall so high, I forgot there was a world on the other side. He tasted like coffee and winter and something else, something that might have been hope. In March, the man with the gun walked into the grocery store. I was there because Daniel had sent me. He was working a carpentry job in Harrisburg, wouldn't be back until Friday, and he'd called me that morning with a list. Eggs, milk, that terrible bread you like, and something chocolate because you deserve something sweet. I'd laughed, told him he was ridiculous, felt my heart swell with a feeling I barely recognized. I was in aisle 7, the canned vegetables and cheap pasta, when I heard the shouting. Everyone on the ground, now! I turned, slow and stupid, my brain, refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. A man in a ski mask, waving a handgun, screaming at the cashier to open the register. The same teenage girl with the braces, now white-faced and shaking, her hands in the air. I dropped to my knees behind my cart, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The man was screaming, incoherent, desperate. The scream of someone who'd reached the end of something, who had nothing left to lose. Open it! Open the damn register! The girl was crying, fumbling with the keys. The man raised the gun, and then the door chimed. I don't know what made me look. Maybe some part of me knew, even before I saw him. Maybe the universe really does give you what you need, when you need it, even if you don't deserve it. Daniel. He walked in like he was walking into my apartment, casual and unhurried, his hands in his jacket pockets. He saw the man with the gun, saw me on the floor, and something shifted in his face. Not fear, something harder, something trained. Hey, he said, his voice calm and steady, the same voice he used when I woke up screaming from nightmares. Why don't you put that down? No one needs to get hurt. The gun swung toward him. Get back! Get the hell back! I'm not going anywhere. Daniel took a step forward, then another. I know what this is. I know what it feels like to be so desperate you'd do anything. But this isn't the way, man. This isn't who you are. Shut up! You don't know me! I know you're scared. I know you're probably doing this for someone you love, or because you lost someone you loved, or because you don't know how to ask for help. Another step. The gun was shaking now, the man's hand unsteady. I know because I've been there. I've stood exactly where you're standing, holding exactly what you're holding, thinking it was the only way out. The store was silent, except for the girl's quiet sobs, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the ragged breathing of a man at the edge. Put it down, Daniel said softly. Please, let me help you. I don't know how long they stood there, the armed man and the stranger who'd paid for my groceries, two broken people recognizing themselves in each other. It felt like hours. It felt like seconds. Then the man lowered the gun. He didn't drop it, just lowered it, his shoulders slumping like a puppet with its strings cut. Daniel moved fast then, crossing the space between them, taking the gun with one hand and gripping the man's shoulder with the other. It's okay, he said, and I didn't know if he was talking to the man or to me or to himself. It's going to be okay. The police came. The man, his name was Eric, I learned later, Eric from Scranton, whose wife had left him and whose daughter was sick and whose desperation had led him to a grocery store in Millbrook on a Wednesday in March, was arrested without resistance. The cashier was unharmed, shaken but whole, and Daniel walked over to where I still knelt on the linoleum, pulled me to my feet and held me while I shook apart and came back together, the way he'd been doing since the day we met. I thought you were in Harrisburg, I whispered into his jacket. I was. I came back early. He pulled back just enough to look at me, those winter sky eyes warm and steady. I had a feeling. A feeling? That you needed me. He smiled, that beautiful broken building smile. And maybe I needed you too. We got married the following spring in the park on Elm Street where the chess players used to gather. Mrs. Gunderson made the cake, peach, because Daniel finally admitted it was better than apple. The teenage cashier from the grocery store was there, braces off now, starting college in the fall on a scholarship Daniel had quietly arranged. Eric came too, out on bail, attending counseling, working a construction job Daniel had helped him find. He cried when he hugged me, whispered thank you into my hair like a prayer. I didn't understand what he was thanking me for until later, when Daniel and I were dancing under the string lights, surrounded by people who'd become our family not by blood, but by choice. I paid it forward, Daniel said when I asked him, his hand warm on my waist. That old woman in Tulsa, she paid for my breakfast. I paid for your groceries. You. He kissed my forehead, my nose, my lips. You paid for my life, Jenna. You gave me a reason to use it. I thought about my mother then, about her belief in kindness, in walking beside people, in the battles we never see. I thought about the stranger in aisle 7 watching me with grief and recognition in his eyes, seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. I thought about the gun and the man who'd lowered it, about the coffee and the winter sky and the way love isn't finite, how it grows and spreads and multiplies when you give it away. Let's keep paying it forward, I said. Daniel smiled, and the string lights reflected in his eyes like stars. Forever. Closing note. Thank you for taking the time to read this story. If it moved you, if it reminded you that kindness still exists in this world, even in the smallest gestures, the briefest encounters, then I've done my job. The world can be a hard place, but it's also full of people like Daniel, like that old woman in Tulsa, like my mother Margaret, who believed that walking beside someone is the greatest gift we can give. If you enjoyed this story, I hope you'll stick around. This channel is dedicated to the kind of tales that make you feel something real, the messy, beautiful, complicated stories of American life told with heart and honesty. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and be part of a community that believes in the power of a good story to change the way we see each other. Good luck out there, friends. Be kind, pay it forward. And remember, you never know whose life you might change with something as simple as paying for their groceries. See you on the next story.